Hello, everybody. So I am Emily Jiang from IBM. I'm a Java champion. I'm a Liberty microservice architect. I work on MicroProfile and OpenLiberty. Please feel free to ask any questions you have. If I don't have time to go through all the questions, I will follow up after the talk. So alternatively, you can reach me via Twitter. My Twitter handle, Emily FH Jiang. So great. So in this session, I will talk about secure microservices made easy using MicroProfile JWT. So I will briefly talk about secure microservices and also some background knowledge on JWT, and then followed by MicroProfile JWT. And finally, I will do a quick demo of using MicroProfile JWT to secure microservices. And they are running, one is running on OpenLiberty, the other running on Quarkus. So let's carry on. So it's, you might have heard of OAuth2, OpenID Connect, or JWT. They are very popular technologies for securing applications. However, they are still very popular to secure microservices. So what are they then? So OAuth2 is authorization protocol. I bet most of you have used OAuth2 before, no matter whether you noticed it or not. So for example, when you first log on to a website, you might have seen a pop-up to say, do you want to log in using Facebook or using GitHub or using Google? So that is the OAuth2 working in the background. So both basically OAuth2 allows logging in into a third-party website using social network. So what is OpenID Connect? OpenID Connect built on top of OAuth2, but is for authentication purpose. It allows a user to confirm its ID to a relying party. So what's the difference between the authorization and authentication then? So authentication determines whether users are who they claim to be, while authorization determines what users can or cannot access. So what is the JWT? Actually, JWT contains a number of claims, and these claims can be transferred between two parties securely and safely. So this set of claims represented as a JSON object that is the base64 URL encoded and digitally signed. They can also encrypt it if you want. So both OAuth2 and OpenID Connect can use JWT as a token format. So here you are. So this is a basic technology we use. So what is the JWT? Actually, it's, a lot of people pronounce JWT as a JWT. So you often hear JWT. So that's JWT. So JWT is a kind of URL safe way of representing claims, and they can be transferred between two parties, and it contains all the information and to guarantee whether this payload hasn't been tampered with or not. So this is claims all represented as a JSON object, and also is signed and can be further encrypted if you want. So the signature can be used to verify whether the token has been tampered with or not. So for more information, you can log on to RFC 7519. So why JWT is so problem? because it provides a great way to propagate user identity for authentication purpose. And also, it's very powerful. It can contain the user attributes, all the user entitlement, access right, and etc. for authorization purpose. Apart from this is the authentication and authorization. Actually, JWT can use to transfer any data, any claim, securely between the servers. So what is the trust model for JWT? As JWT is self-described and verifiable by using the signature. So basically how it works, when the JWT is first created, the issuer will sign JWT using its private key, and then it passes the JWT to the destination. And when the receiver, when the destination receives the JWT, it will be able to use a matching public key to verify the JWT and to tell whether to verify whether this JWT has been tampered with or not. So you might also heard of there's a lot different kind of the terms like JWT, JWS, and JWE and JWKey. So what's the difference? Actually, if you think of JWT, is abstract. It's almost like an abstract class. The detailed implementation is either JWS or JWE. GWS is assigned JWT, is widely used. Most of the time when you talk about JWT is GWS. And GWE is kind of encrypted GWS. And what is JWKey? Actually, JWKey is the cryptographic key for the public key. As I mentioned earlier, the destination, the receiver, will need to use the public key to verify whether the JWT hasn't been manipulated or not. So this public key will be able to put in the JWKey. Actually, the other thing is that a set of the public key can be put in the JWKey sets. And then like the destination can store this key set in another server. Whenever it needs to use a public key, it's going to go to the other website and get hold of the JWKey and to be able to decode the JWT. So for further information, you can go to Josie website to read more. So what is the JWS looks like? JWS has 3 parts. It contains the header, payload, and a signature. Remember, they are all base64 URL encoded. So in the header, on the top, it contains the type, which is JWT, and also algorithm, like for the decode this JW payload. So for example, when the algorithm is RS256 or RE256, HS256, these are a lot of the algorithms. And then the second part is the payload. You can see this is all claims. And then finally is the signature. So this is kind of using Mac code to be able to like encode this JWT payload. So these 3 parts separated using dot. So this is what JWE looks like. JWE, as I mentioned earlier, is the encrypted JWS. Obviously, it has 5 parts. Like I have more information. It needs to have an encrypted key and etc. And a ciphertext is the encrypted JWS. So this is very complex. You can refer to the Josie website to understand more. So I briefly mentioned about this JWT. So how can you create a JWT? So JWT can be created by the application by directly calling some APIs. This API can be some app server supply, offer you some API, OpenLiberty offer you API to directly create a JWT. And also Vertex also has an API, JWT auth can allow give you option to create a JWT as well. Alternatively, you can go to the security reverse proxy server that support JWT, can create a JWT after user login. So finally, actually, this probably is most used version. Basically, OpenID connect providers such as IBM W3ID, BlueID, Asm, Pin, Azure, Auth0, and Liberty with OpenID connect provider feature, Keycloak, Okta, they can all create a JWT for you. So that's the kind of quick tour about JWT. So what is MicroProfile JWT? Remember, first thing I want to emphasize, MicroProfile JWT is provide a way to secure microservices. However, there's a challenge with securing microservices because these microservices are mainly stateless, and security contexts cannot be saved in the backend, cannot be saved on the server side. So the security context need to pass with the request, using the HTTP header and etc. The other thing is the microservices normally need to talk to other microservices. So you need to also provide a way to ensure this interoperable. So MicroProfile JWT fulfill two purposes. One is the secure microservices. The second one is also interoperable. So in the MicroProfile 1.0 is defined the interoperable JWT token format, and also the APIs to be able to access the token. In the 1.1, it also include the support for JWT and etc. OpenLiberty support both MicroProfile JWT 1.0 and 1.1. So it's that's the kind of quickly go through the requirements. So what is the MicroProfile JWT really like? What it did add over and above JWT? So basically, it has 3 requirements. The first one, it says okay, your JWT must contain the issuer, so is a ISS. And second, it introduced 2 more claims. One is UPN, the other one is groups. Thirdly, the MicroProfile JWT must be signed using RS-256. I mentioned earlier, you could assign JWT using other algorithm. However, MicroProfile JWT 1.0 and 1.1 ask you must assign with RS-256. And actually in the spec, we said issuer and the UPN must be mandatory. We didn't say whether groups is mandatory or not. However, in the 1.2 to be released later, we say groups actually is optional. So how the MicroProfile JWT works? So I also for the creation JWT I already mentioned. However, in the backend, when your microservice access get hold of the MicroProfile JWT, by what kind of format to be able to get hold of this MicroProfile JWT. For the JAX-RS application, they can access the JSON web token from the security context. So showing, I have an example here. You can directly do a art context, security context, and then you can do a get user principal. And the user principal is a JSON web token if you enable MicroProfile JWT feature. And then you can get hold of all the claims inside this JSON web token. And alternatively, you can also inject this JSON web token using CDI, or you can inject each individual claims using this qualifier at claim and specify which claim you want and then inject into a variable. So it's okay. I described what MicroProfile JWT is and how the like microservice access a JSON web token, and actually how it works, and how can I use the MicroProfile JWT to secure my microservice. Actually, for secure microservices, you have to use Jakarta EE security using roles allowed. So it's, you can specify which role allowed to access this endpoint. So it's remember when I mentioned earlier, MicroProfile JWT has like a UPN and also groups. That groups you can say as actually belong to the group user. So in this case, this microservice get hold of that JWT, and then the runtime will directly get hold of the claim to find out the group is the user, and then it will say, okay, this request allowed to be served because that has a user, and also this endpoint allow user to access it. However, sometimes like maybe group and roles kind of using different term. Maybe you define the groups saying admin instead of administrator. How can you map them to say actually when I say admin, actually I mean administrator. So actually in Liberty you can configure them in the application BND. So this is put in the all into one picture. So it's basically the user directly get hold of JWT, either create itself himself or using a OpenID connector provider or the proxy server, and then can pass the JWT token to the server. When the server receives the token, and then it can use the public key to decode this JWT, and then can figure out and then create a JSON web token. So this in this way, the application itself can access a JSON web token and then be able to work out, make authorization decision. So based on the JWT claims. So this is the following is a kind of three very popular use case using this MicroProfile JWT. The first one is kind of very simple. So basically the client create a JWT and then pass the JWT to the backend. So the backend will say make an authorization decision based on the JWT claims. The second one is the client doesn't create a JWT, is delegate the creation to the reverse proxy server. So this one is after user log in, the reverse proxy server create a JWT and then pass down a downstream to the other server. So other application can directly make a authorization decision based on the JWT claims, mostly based on the groups. So this is third one. So this is used kind of popular, it's quite widely used. Basically, you rely on the OpenID Connect for the single sign-on. So what it's, how it works, basically client directly invoke the application. Like in Liberty, for example, in server XML is you configure to use the OpenID connected provider directly to do the authentication. So that OpenID connector service maybe is kind of Keycloak or Okta and etc. It can create a MicroProfile JWT token, and then you can pass it downstream, and then the microservices get hold of JWT T and actually is observe the like a JSON web token to see which groups you belong to, and then can match with the backend the endpoint requirement, and then determine whether this request can be served or not. So in OpenLiberty, actually, we support like a GWT and also MicroProfile JWT today, like GWT 1.0, like OpenID Connect client can directly talk to other OpenID Connect server provider, such as Keycloak, Okata, and etc. And also has a single sign-on, and also support MicroProfile JWT 1.0 and 1.1. So that's a quick tour of the JWT and MicroProfile JWT. So let me give you a quick demo to see how to use the MicroProfile JWT to secure like microservices. So I have 2 microservices. So service A running on OpenLiberty. So it's a service A and already started using the dev mode running on OpenLiberty. And service B, service A is trying to access service B. Service B is running on Quarkus. So you can see it's on Quarkus. So in the POM, you can see it's directly is running on Quarkus. So it's let me first show you service B. So it has endpoint protected. So it's this get database value. So basically it's saying rows allowed. So if you belong to the row protected, you are allowed to access this. If not, and you will be forbidden. So the other things I mentioned earlier, you can inject a particular claim. So here I inject a customer value. And then use a type of claim value directly get hold of customer custom or get value. So this is the back end. So let me show you the front end. So this is the kind of the I use this is the service A. So this is directly running on OpenLiberty. And service A, I use the JAX as a client. You can see web target directly call into this 8080. So that's a Quarkus port. And then when I trying to send a request, I put a JWT token over HTTP header is with the title authorization and bearer and with a token. So how did I create this token? So basically, I use the vertex. I use the vertex JWT auth, and create it. When I create it, look at is I use RS256 is the algorithm, encoding algorithm, and also I use the private key to create a JWT. So what's inside the JWT, I can set all the claims. So 2 very important claims is UPN, and the other one is groups. So here I said groups they belong to protected, and also the UPN, the Jesse, and they need to make sure I issue this one is mandatory as well. So I showed you earlier, I added additional claim customer value here, and hopefully the backend be able to find this custom claim as shown here. So trying to get hold of the JSON web token and directly this custom value. So they are all running in the background already. So here is the invocation. So you may think, oh, is this really true or not? So let me change this one to be a super, only super allowed to access it. And then it's automatically built. See, you will see forbidden. So If I change it back here, protected, save it. So this is the demo mode, directly pick up the change. So you can see this as well. So just like make sure actually OpenLiberty also have this protected, OpenLiberty has this demo mode. If I change it here to be, for example, admin, and in the client, if I go back here, see the forbidden, because OpenLiberty also has this demo mode, so it pick up the changes straight away. Yeah, so if I change it to be protected, it will work again. Yeah, so that's kind of the pretty much I want to cover today. Oh no, let me quickly spend 1 more minute. So this is like upcoming release in the MicroProfile JWT 1.2. It supports in addition to RS-256, including the algorithm, also add the ES-256. And previously only supported JWS, now it support JWE as well. And also you can specify where to put the where the key is to be able to decrypt this like a JWE. So that's kind of pretty much, this is a really useful links about JWT and MicroProfile JWT, and also OpenLiberty has a guide to teach you how to use MicroProfile JWT. And also there's two really good blogs for you to get started using Keycloak or using Autocar as an OpenID connector provider. So with that, let me stop sharing to see are there any questions. So I have like 2 minutes. So I will try to also, can you create the JWT using MicroProfile? No, you can't. Actually, it's very interesting. Actually, I raised this issue on the MicroProfile, the community JWT, MicroProfile GitHub. No, at the moment, there's no API as yet. So hopefully, we'll try to get that covered in the future releases. So at the moment, like some apps give you an API for you to create a JWT token, like OpenLiberty. Also, I showed you use like use the vertex and etc. to create JWT token. So the other one, any plan to loosen the requirement, JWT must contain the groups claim. Yeah, we already have in the MicroProfile 1.2, we already made the groups to be optional. So we have a different provider, so we currently can't use this one. We'll group, yes, it is. The groups claim is optional in the MicroProfile JWT 1.2 to be released, hopefully in November time. So stay tuned. So it's kind of the things are nearly ready. We have a release candidate. Actually, you can try it out. Try the OpenLiberty 20012-beta. It has MicroProfile JWT 1.2 in it. So give us any feedback you have. So that pretty much concluded today's talk. I hope you learned something. Welcome any feedback. Thank you. Bye.